Hello everyone. For my current European economic situation, I chose to talk about the European debt crisis. Though it is not a positive economic situation, it is still an economic situation all the same. The official credited start date for the Euro crisis is in 2009, but it continues today. It began from a various number of things, including easy credit conditions in the early and mid-2000s that resulted in high-risk lending and borrowing, the financial crisis of '07 and '08, international trade imbalances, real estate bubbles, the Great Recession, poor national fiscal policy choices, and poor approaches to bail out the banks. As well, you can see with all the recent news about Greece and the bailouts, they kind of are the face of the Euro crisis, but they can't be completely blamed for all that has gone wrong. If you look at the map, you see more reds, yellows, and oranges than anything green. Spain, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, and Cyprus are five nations that maybe not as bad off as Greece, but still have a substantial debt. So Greece cannot be completely blamed for the situation in Europe. The ECB has played a rather large role in the European debt crisis. So, as talked about in Dr. French's PowerPoint, the general tasks of the ECB are price stability, and they do that by controlling inflation and deflation rates by setting interest rates. They define and implement Eurozone monetary policy, and they try to promote a smooth operation of the financial market. But as we can see, that hasn't gone over very well. So with the increasing problems of the Euro crisis, they have stepped outside their traditional role. They've done this by purchasing government bonds through these various programs. The first was the Securities Market Program in 2010. This allowed them to purchase government bonds to temporarily bring down the borrowing costs. This was expanded in 2012 by the outright monetary transactions. This allowed the ECB to buy bonds on the secondary market at unlimited amounts. But they had stimulations for the countries. They had to help. They were held to commit to reform, and there was also a sterilization rule in place, so that way money supply would remain constant. Nobody was creating money to help bail out these countries. In 2014, a single supervisory mechanism was created, and this basically allowed the ECB to grow and allowed them to monitor stability of all Euro currency members. And then the single resolution mechanism was created at the same time, but it won't be fully operational until 2016. And this will basically make it so that the ECB can help support failing banks that can be saved, but also shut down banks that are too far gone to stop them from making the problem worse. So what's the future for this Euro crisis? What's going to happen? The most desirable situation, in my opinion, would be a fiscal union. And this would allow the EU to pool all of their debts together and create a better banking system that's more unified and on the same page. Some people in the EU would prefer a Grexit. Specifically, Greece leaving the Eurozone. They feel that this would allow them, the EU, to get rid of the burden of Greece, but also that it would allow Greece to have to go out and find their own competition and re-stimulate their own economy to help take themselves out of their own problem. But no matter what, they decided that to do, three things have to be done in the EU to help take themselves out of the Euro crisis. These three things would be bank reforms, They have to revitalize weakened banks and kill off dead banks, or else the problem is going to keep getting worse. They have to be able to reform how these banks are operating in order to limit and reduce or even get rid of the problem that they've gotten themselves into. The EU as a whole has to lower debts. As that map showed, it's more than just Greece that's in a huge debt crisis. Half or more of the EU has a serious debt problem. And even some of the other ones, even though they were in the green, they were a lighter shade of green, which means that they still have a pretty substantial debt. So that the EU as a whole needs to lower their debts. And all the countries in the EU need to promote growth and positive investments.